There she is.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Laura.
Sorry about that technical issue.
That's right. I thought you'd already registered, actually. That's why
Who knows? I was in the wrong place altogether. So I will chat as long as everyone needs. Sorry for the delay. And
that's okay.
hi.
Good to see you.
Yes.
All right, here. So, well, thanks for coming, everybody. We have about 65 registered, so everybody's filtering in now. Um, if you are, so I'm Chris Russell. I'm the founder of HR Lancers. Glad you could all join us today in our latest community hangout. We usually have these about once a month or so. And if you are new to HR Lancers, we're a platform for freelance HR pros and independent recruiters to find remote roles, projects, gigs. Think of us as the Upwork for HR. That's the goal here, to help you find projects and jobs out there in the space and help you build your own career. So that's why I started the company. Again, feel free to add your LinkedIn URLs in the chat so we can all connect to each other, and we'll do some virtual networking. So let's get to our guest here. Let me introduce Laura Mazzullo. She's the founder and owner of Eastside Staffing, based in New York City. It's a boutique recruitment firm focused on the placement of experienced HR professionals for the last 15 years. Laura's developed a successful career in recruitment and brings an entrepreneurial spirit and passion for building relationships. She's committed to and passionate about the talent acquisition space, and is always looking for new ways to innovate and support her HR network. So I follow her on the social medias for a couple of years now, and just love what she puts out there. She's very knowledgeable in the space, and figured today we talk about job search advice for the HR crowd and get her take on what mistakes some of you guys are making out there from her perspective, since she does place you guys all the time. And Laura, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're excited to kind of talk about what's going on in this market and how we can be most efficient and kind of get the most results that you need to be getting right now in a pandemic. Obviously, we know it's a difficult market. So Chris and I are prepared to have a very honest conversation to help you so that you can hear what you can be doing differently.
Awesome. So Laura, just before we start though, tell me more about when you started Eastside Staffing and what was the impetus to go work for yourself?
Yeah, I started my own business 7 years ago, so 2013. I had been in recruiting for 10 years before that, which I do recommend to anyone trying to go off on their own. I think it's helpful to have kind of a base and a foundation from a larger company, have a mentor, have a boss that you can really learn from. I was really focused on HR recruitment since 2007. So I had been through that dip of a recession in 2008. And I think that really gave me the confidence to realize if I could get through that market, recruiting for HR, which was, as challenging as it is this year, you can continue. So it was really the week of Hurricane Sandy, which Chris, I know you're in Connecticut and you remember that
Oh yeah.
crazy time. Whatever was swirling in the air that week with the weather and sort of that other natural crisis we were dealing with then, I really felt ready. So that was kind of the impetus. It was sort of a strange moment of, I think I can do this on my own. There was really a need in the marketplace for a boutique firm. No one in New York that I knew of was really doing it, especially kind of in my age group as a woman. It was sort of kind of a specific niche. There was an executive search function for HR leaders in New York that was really boutique, and then there were a lot of large companies doing it. But I was hearing from clients that they really wanted somebody that was more consultative and more of a partner, and that was the way I like to work. So it's kind of all the stars aligned, which I think is true for most entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you learned in that time frame about working for yourself? Because I think you're a one woman business, right?
Yep.
What have you kind of learned over these 7 years or so since starting?
You learn a lot about yourself. I saw a great tweet the other day. I need to give credit to whoever wrote it. So if they see this, please shout it out. It was basically saying that when you're an entrepreneur, you think you're not going to have a boss anymore, and so you won't have any like drama or conflict or stressors. But actually, you're your own boss, which is really challenging because you're sort of forced to look inward, to be really self-reflective and really self-aware. So I think the learning is really around how I'm willing to evolve and grow and learn and develop. And it's really about constantly being willing to pivot and change and learn. And not feel like what you knew 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago is going to work today. And in recruiting, which historically can be kind of an arrogant space where, I don't know, we haven't really valued humility historically. I think that's hard and important to remember. It's one of my core values. So, that's what I've learned, just to stay humble, to stay open to learning, to know you don't know it all. And that you're your own kind of teacher, really, when you're owning your own business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, by the way, everyone, if you have a question for Laura, just throw in the chat or just speak up. And I've got a bunch of questions for her as well, so we'll go through some of those. And if you happen to think of something, just don't be afraid to ask. So Laura, a lot of layoffs and furloughs happening in the HR recruiting space because of the pandemic overall. I just want to get your thoughts on what are you telling these folks about, staying positive during these challenging times right now?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of recruiters who will kind of give you the positive spin that's very sort of sugar coated. I'm not one of those people. So I'm a realist. I'm an optimist and I'm very positive, but I also believe that we can do both. We can be positive and realistic. The reality is it's a difficult time. So first, I think we really need to acknowledge that. And I think that when I talk to people one-on-one and I mention that, it's almost like people are able to exhale. I'm not sure if as a community, especially in HR and recruitment, we've sort of allowed room for the negative feelings or the hard feelings. And so, yes, I say we have to be positive. Of course, I give them hopeful tips and tricks, which we're going to talk about here. But I also just want to remind everyone, this is a pandemic. It's a difficult time, no matter who you are, where you live, what's going on in your life. I really want to acknowledge that. And I think that that's important when you're job searching, to not be so hard on yourself, that it's challenging. You will get there. You will find your next position. It's out there. Of course, better days are ahead. But also just making room maybe for some of the negative feelings. That's important too.
No, I don't.
Hey, Bret, you want to go on mute there?
So it's kind of that hybrid of being hopeful and also, I think, really kind of being realistic so that people don't feel bad when they're feeling down. I think that's actually sometimes what's happening, is people feel like, why am I not finding a job? And I'm cranky today, or I'm tired today, or I'm depleted today. And we sort of don't want to feel those feelings, because in recruitment and HR, we tend to be sort of the life force, the positive ones, the empath. No problem, Bret, it happens to us all. So yeah, I think it's just important to remember that we can be both, right? We can be optimistic and positive, and also make room for real emotion and real connection, especially as job seekers.
Yeah. So you sent me a question before the show about biggest mistakes you see among job seekers, HR job seekers. Yeah. So, and you talked about, you mentioned networking and personal branding overall. So what do you want to say around that particular topic?
Yeah, no, I'm so glad. And for everyone who's on here, Chris and I have been talking about really where candidates are going wrong. And, I'm trying to remove judgment from my vocabulary. So as you just asked me what I've learned in 7 years, that's a lesson for me. I don't want to be judgmental that there's good behavior, bad behavior. But where I see room for improvement, where I see behavior that I think, wow, if this was tweaked or improved, it would really mean something. It's coming in the introductory notes that I receive. So most of us aren't sending out cover letters anymore, right? I'm sure most of you don't even do that. It's not required, it's not necessary. So what you're doing instead is often sending out an introductory email to someone, whether it's a hiring manager, a recruiter, an alumni group, whoever, you're probably sending an email.
Yeah.
And I get about 20 introductory emails a day from HR folks, and I would say 2 out of 20 are written really well. Like where I would say, wow, this email is reflective of their personal brand, is kind and empathetic in tone, is clear in terms of content, demonstrates kind of who they are, why they're reaching out to me specifically. Like there's real content that is good, right? And I think, or again, not to say good or bad, that is really just strong and makes them rise. The other 18, where I think people are struggling, is that we assume sort of these robots are reading our emails, right? So I've asked people, because I respond to all the emails and I try to talk to everyone I can. And sometimes if I think the email has room for improvement, I'll actually read it to them, or I'll have them read it to me and say, just let me know why you wrote it this way, or what your tone meant, or what you were getting at. And a lot of the feedback I'm hearing, and it's interesting, even from HR leaders, is they'll say to me, I assumed you wouldn't read it, or I assumed you'd delete it, because most recruiters don't even respond. So I assumed it was a robot or just go into the garbage. And so the conversations I've been having and the coaching I've been doing is, always assume a human being is going to read that email. Most of us do. And assume that you're writing it and as a first impression. And I think that will change the email completely. So I just want to say I get sort of the frustration of why people might be writing it that way, but assume positive intent. Assume that the recipient is excited to talk to you, is excited to meet you. I think it'll change the tone and the content, of that email.
Yeah. I don't know if you happen to have one of those handy, but I'd love to hear one.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, as you know, I launched a webinar on how to kind of help job seekers. And so one of the sections we talk about is the emails, and I'm happy it happens to be on my desk, these notes. There's kind of 4 approaches I talk about in my course. I'll give you guys a sneak peek here about, these are kind of the 4 approaches people need to improve upon. And it's weird, I've been gathering the data. I know most of us love data and metrics. I've actually been like really looking at all these emails and trying to categorize them in terms of like, where are they going wrong? The first one is really what I call the passive aggressive approach. And this is like an email I'll get that says, I wrote you yesterday and I haven't heard back yet. Or I emailed you on LinkedIn on Tuesday and I haven't heard back yet. And it's like, it's making the recipient feel badly that they didn't reply quickly enough. And that's a tricky first impression too, because now you've already set me up to apologize, and now I feel guilty for something that maybe was just an issue of timing. So again, that's a tricky one. The second one is what I call sort of a short-sighted approach, which is when I think candidates feel like I only should reach out to a recruiter or a hiring manager or a fellow TA or HR pro when I need something. So the email will say something like, you wrote me 2 years ago, but I never replied. I didn't need you then. I need you now. I get a lot of those, and it sort of surprises me when I get them, but it's interesting. I had one the other day that I loved where he said, you wrote me 3 years ago on LinkedIn, and just for everyone's knowledge, I don't send business development emails. It was actually just like an introduction. I'd like to connect with you. I'd like to know you. 3 years ago, he never replied. It happens to me all the time. Most of us can deal with rejection. It's fine. But he wrote in his introductory note to me, you wrote me 3 years ago and I didn't reply then. At the time, I didn't see the importance of networking, and I do now. I hope you're welcome to have a call with me and can forgive me for maybe not recognizing the power of a community then. I thought that was so profound and so great. Honest and showed growth. The last 2 that I really see a lot of is kind of the boastful approach, which can be really kind of braggy or arrogant, which just for me is kind of a pet peeve. They'll say like, I'm a highly gifted HR pro, best in the biz. Like, you want to place me. I don't know, just feels sort of disingenuous. And then the last approach that I've found is kind of what I call the robotic approach. And it's usually just see your resume, or maybe there's nothing in the body of the email, just an attachment. And again, when I ask people about those, that's when they'll say, I didn't think anyone would read it, so I didn't put any effort in. And I remind people, just like we tell sourcers, you can have a template of an email that you copy and paste if you need to, and obviously tweak a few things. But taking some time to really draft an email that you can read and say, am I proud of this? Is this the best first impression I can make? Is this representing my personal brand? And thinking about it from the point of view of the recipient, like how would I feel if I received this email, is really kind of like the best place to start.
Yeah. Good stuff, Laura. Yeah. So I was just thinking of a question.
Coming in from Bret. Yeah, I don't know if you see that.
Let's see there.
I'm happy to answer it now.
Yeah. So it says, living in this TIDR world, I'm not sure what those mean. Where's the line between the volume of your message hinders the chances of being read at all? Have you seen data on length of email versus open response rates?
Yeah, such a great question. I haven't seen data on that.
There is some data out there. If you Google, like, how to write a subject line, things like that. There is some generic marketing data around some of that stuff.
Sure.
Generally, the shorter the better. Generally.
I mean, I'll tell you, as the recipient of so many emails, Bret, like I I agree. It doesn't have to be so long. It actually just has to be sort of polite to me. I know that sounds really bizarre to say, but um, actually one of my students in my course made me this hat. It's called my empathy hat, because at one point in the training I said, everyone put your empathy hat on, and I had no hat, so now she sent me one that I can wear.
Very nice.
But I said, put your empathy hat on when you send these emails. Like, think about the reader. And I think it changes the tone. It doesn't have to be long. It could literally just be like, hi, my name is Bret. I'm also in talent acquisition. I would love to connect with you. Was impressed with your latest blog, podcast, blah, blah, blah. You know, are you open to the idea of a coffee or a Zoom? Would love to learn from you, would love to network with you, would love to get to know you. It's just, I think what happens is it can be really selfish, these emails, because we're in a place of hunger, of wanting and needing something, and we sort of forget the other person is also a human being in a pandemic. So especially in 2020, I think these emails are more important than they even were 6 months ago.
Yeah. Carl's asking, what are the best job search sites for HR projects? So HR Lancers, of course.
Exactly, yours.
She's home with her special needs son with autism. I was going to do more virtual schooling. So yeah, so it's HR Lancers number one. You can try Upwork. I've gotten some stuff off of there, but it's very tech focused, and there's the HR stuff is, there is some stuff on there, but it's, kind of few and far between.
Totally.
Um,
I mean, that's why you built HR Lancers.
yeah, yeah.
I'll tell the audience that that's really what it is. It's hard to find freelance or contract or interim projects in HR on any of the big sites.
The other place is Facebook groups. So there are some, the recruiting Facebook groups. I do see people posting in there, hey, I'm looking for a consultant for this. I saw one today, actually. They're looking for some kind of wage and hourly law consulting. But yeah, join the Facebook groups for recruiters. You will find stuff on there. There's one called also Jobs for Recruiters. That's a pretty good one if you're looking for a lot of recruiting stuff. But check out those groups. I think they're a good source as well. And you have to, kind of monitor them and keep abreast of what people are saying in there overall.
And what I would say to people like Carla, and I know this is coming from an entrepreneur saying this, but if you really have the flexibility to build something on your own, there is really a need in this market for HR consulting. So a lot of companies, especially in the tech space that are so small, they may not have need for a full-time HR person, and you could really be offering your services on a project basis on your own. So just keep that in mind. You may not be ready at the moment, but just to have the confidence to know that I'm seeing a lot more of those people kind of coming out too.
Here's a question for you, Laura. So if you look on LinkedIn today and you look at any kind of recruiting or HR job, there's literally dozens, if not hundreds of applicants.
Yeah.
How do you break through that, in your opinion?
Yeah. First of all, let's just have a real talk that a lot of those jobs right now are not real jobs. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are pipelining right now. So I just want candidates to remember that that's one tool in the shed. That is not the only way you're going to get a job. So apply for some jobs every day, but know that some of those might be pipelining. Some of those might be something down the road. Some of them might be out there so the brand looks good and they look busy and people say, oh, blah, 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 it's hiring. All sorts of weird behaviors going on. Obviously, we don't agree with it, but that's the reality. So I just want you to be really fair with yourself about that.
What percentage would you say, if you had to put a number on there, the pipelining?
I mean, it's like a lot. I mean, the thing is, not everyone admits it, right?
Yeah.
So if I have friends who are in recruiting at that company and I call them and I say, oh, wow, I see you're hiring a chief people officer. They're like, well, down the road, probably Q4, maybe Q1 2021. I don't know. For the sake of sanity, say half. Say 50% of the jobs that you see are really hiring right now. We will try and pull some real data if people want to be honest about it. But I think I would say it's just keep that in mind. The other thing is, I was doing a one-to-one coaching yesterday with someone and they said to me, should I be sending like invites on LinkedIn? Should I be connecting with people? And I said, of course, so all of you can literally open up a spreadsheet or Google Doc or notebook, whatever you use, and think about 20 or 40 or 60 heads of talent acquisition or heads of HR that you can email directly. Like, even if they're not hiring right now, you don't actually know, because as we said, the data is so skewed right now in this pandemic. So it's hard to know, are these jobs on Indeed real? Are they not? Are they urgent? Are they not? your best bet is actually just to get to know some hiring managers in your world. So if you live in Seattle and you want to be an internal recruiter at a tech company, why not make a list of 20 heads of talent acquisition in tech, send a really well-written, empathetic email, and connect with them and see if you can have coffee, a virtual coffee date. Don't ask for a job right away. Just see if you can actually meet more people. I think that it's sort of like there's a little bit of job searching right now that's kind of planting seeds. It's like it feels slower than it should, and it's annoying because you're like, that's not going to get me to the end result, but it will. It's just like you talk to 20 heads of talent acquisition, or you email 20, and 10 get back to you. Maybe 5 of those know of a job, either in their company or their friend's company or whatever. Or if they get a job in October, you're the first person they think of. So applying for jobs, you have to think of it as one tool in the shed, not the entire toolbox. It's really about kind of making one-on-one connections, especially right now, right? People want human connection, even hiring managers.
Yeah. How about resumes? So how good are recruiters in HR at writing their own resumes?
It's an area for improvement, which first of all is totally understood, right? Resume writing is a skill. Just because you read 100 resumes a day doesn't mean you're good at it, right? When I'm writing my own resume, I have to have 40 people in this space look at it for me, and the same should be true for you. I mean, they're just as, as bad as others. They're just as kind of in need of improvement. Where I think, I know you and I were talking about this, like what are the best resume tips? And there are just so many because it depends really what's going on with your personal resume, which is why it's sometimes nice to hire a coach or a trainer to help you with it. But the main thing I see, and this is kind of the main tip, is the first few bullets under each job should be the things you're most proud of or reflective of the things that you're looking to do in the future. Don't put your biggest achievements as bullet 8 and some administrative junior level task at bullet 1 if that's not what you're looking to do, because most readers of a resume probably only go down 3 or 4 bullets.
Yeah, top of the fold, they call it.
That's right. And I find a lot that's like a big one with HR for some reason, because they're probably doing it chronologically, like they'll jot things in as they think of them. The ones at the top were when they first started at that job 2 years ago, and the ones at the bottom, most recent, they just kind of need to be flipped around. So it sounds like a simple thing, but I bet most of you, if you look at your resume, you can be moving some bullets in different directions.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And
verbs. I just want to say also verbs, like things like assisted, supported, acted as, they can sound really subservient, I suppose. And most HR folks I know and most TA folks I know want to feel like a leader because they are. They want to be seen as strategic. They want to be seen as a partner. And so you have to be really thoughtful about the verbs that you're using on your resume, because we often undersell ourselves in this space, which is, a whole nother topic of why we're not as psychologically strong and confident as other areas. But that's really a big issue with HR resumes. They're often underselling themselves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. What about interviewing tips? I know we were all doing a lot of virtual Zoom interviews. Are you seeing any issues there with some of your candidates?
I think, most HR folks are good at interviewing, I will say. It's probably a natural strength because they're naturally good at interacting with people and connection. I would say the difference in 2020 has to be that you have to make some room for like an honest dialogue, even when you're being interviewed. Like, this is not the market to be so formal and so stiff and so robotic. And again, I think it's having empathy for the hiring manager and making room to say, like, how are you? I heard there was a power outage in your area. How is that going? Or, how are the school things going? Whatever comes up in the interview, not feeling afraid of maybe it's an unusual intimacy on an interview that you might not have had last year. I think making room for some of that is good because, we train our hiring managers to hire with competencies and obviously tons of skills. We would not say you're hiring just because you like the person. But as we're coaching hiring managers to evaluate a scorecard and be equitable and all of this, we also need to make sure that we remember it's still a conversation between two people. And if you kind of come across as really detached from this pandemic, I think it can be tricky.
Yeah.
Well, Megan, we'll see you soon.
You've got some, I follow you on Twitter, Laura. You got some great stuff up there. I saw a couple of tweets about a few of your successful clients. Can you give me a couple of stories as to how they went about finding a job, and maybe tell us a
Yeah,
success story there?
absolutely. So for sure. So a lot of people I know are starting to get jobs, which is great. People who've been laid off in March, now we're in August, people are starting to land. I would say the ones that are landing jobs are being really open-minded and being really creative. So it might not be a company that they ordinarily thought they would look at, or the role might be a little outside their box. So for example, they might be an HR business partner, or were a business partner in February, and now they're landing something that's a little bit more recruiting focused or a little bit more employee relations heavy that, if I'd asked them in February, they might have said, oh, I don't think I really want something like that. Now they're feeling a bit more open, which is a good thing. This doesn't have to be your forever job, right? This job that you're landing in the middle of a crisis, don't put the pressure on yourself that this is the next move you have to stay in for 5 years. I think, really,
Yeah.
9 months, a year max, and then you can move along. This is kind of, so the ones who are landing are being really flexible. I think they're being flexible even with compensation. What I would say is that those of us who have relationships with hiring managers, we're trying to remind hiring managers, do not lower salaries because it's a crisis. Do not lower value. People are still strong. They're still smart. They still know what they do. I just want to be realistic that unfortunately some employers are taking advantage of this type of a crisis. So the salaries that you're hearing about might be a little bit under what you're used to. The roles might be a little less sexy than they were 6 months ago. And again, I want to just really emphasize, it's not a reflection on any of you. It's really a reflection on the market. And we saw this in 2009 too. So we're doing our part to educate them, but also, I guess, be realistic.
Yeah, I saw one of your tweets there about lots of coordinator, administrator jobs out there. Companies want cheap
Yeah.
in HR. They think they can get someone junior to do it all. Sigh. So yeah, definitely true there.
Yeah, that was always a really tough part of 2009, was that all these companies stopped hiring like directors and VPs of HR because they were too expensive. They would bring in coordinators and analysts and assistants, which is, of course, there should be jobs for them too. But the problem was they were kind of hiring somebody in at an entry level salary, expecting them to run the HR department.
Right.
And then those people were so burned out and so in over their heads, and it was just a disaster. And I think, like, I was looking just on Indeed the other day to get a sense of what trends I was seeing, and I thought, wow, there's so many junior positions. It was really interesting. So, it's something we're educating hiring managers on. But in the meantime, if you can go back to that level, or if there's a level that was one step behind you, this might be the time to kind of say, okay, how bad would it be to take a half a step back?
Yeah. How do you feel about the, a lot of people are on LinkedIn putting those messages, hey, open to work, hashtag, it's got laid off due to COVID, send me leads. Do you think those types of activities are positive and work for seekers out there?
Yeah, but I want to share something I just learned from a candidate of mine, which I did not know. If you put, let's say you worked at ABC company, we'll call it, and you were laid off in March. If you put March 2020 as the end date under your position, you don't show up on the top of a recruiter's search. Very bizarre. So you have to have a present date, like it has to say, January 2019 to present. I literally did not know that. So if all of you know that, awesome. I was late to that party. I did have a conversation with LinkedIn about it. It was amazing. I tweeted about it. They called me, which was very cool. And I said, look, I'm really concerned that everyone out of work is now falling down to the bottom of the search. So they were going to play with some algorithms on the back. Exactly.
Oh, really?
If you're, Bret's saying, if you're connected with that recruiter, you also don't show up in the first page. Exactly. You're never on the first page, never ever, unless you have, it's so weird. So I had a whole talk with them and really tried to explain why I thought that was unfair.
Yeah.
They sort of defended why they did it. It was very convoluted. Point being, so then they created that little circle, which I think was probably their compromise algorithmically or something to have that there. Point is, even if you were laid off, put till present, and then in the bullets, like just say laid off due to COVID, March 20th.
Write your headline or something.
That's right. Like, you can be honest, but don't keep it till present. so that you show up. Because as Bret said, you don't want to show up on page 72 of a search. I don't mind the green circle thing. I know there's been a big debate on it. If it looks desperate, if it makes people kind of look too active, you know, I could talk for hours about active versus passive talent. For me, it's never been an issue because why should it matter if you're out of work or working?
Yeah. Some people feel a stigma.
That's right. I was going to say there's a stigma. So it's a tricky one. It really is. The people who feel it's a stigma will probably judge somebody with the circle. So I suppose it's a personal choice if you want to have it or not.
Yeah.
I'm very conflicted about that. I mean, it's sad that that's the commentary, but you're absolutely right. It's the reality.
Bret says, if you're connected with a recruiter, you also don't show up on the first page.
Right. It's very bizarre.
Yeah. Interesting.
They tried to tell me that, like, if you pay for a LinkedIn recruiter, it doesn't matter. But I was like, well, there was some whole thing around, like, well, if you're contacting candidates, you should be, like, there were workarounds in LinkedIn Recruiter to find those people, but in the premium or the basic plans, you couldn't. And I said, this isn't really an issue. This isn't where you should be making money, right? People out of work should be able to be found.
Yeah.
So.
Carl's got another question for you. She's taken a couple years off from her HR career after her son's autism diagnosis. She had 13 years of HR experience. And she has a master's. She's SHRM certified. On her CV, should she add the caregiver during these 2.5 years, or just list her last HR role?
Yeah. So my initial reaction is, of course, you should add that, because the 2.5 years is a solid amount of time, and I'm sure people will be asking you on an interview what you've done during that time, and there's no shame or guilt around what you've done. It's really an accomplishment, and obviously a massive undertaking and emotional labor and all of that. I think what I would say to you is, if you want to work at a place that believes in empathy, compassion, family values, then of course you would put it on. If you want to go work at a corporate investment bank where they would shun you for it, then you have to leave it off. But knowing you and how you've brought this up, even on these chat boxes, I would imagine you're looking for a place that aligns with your mission and values. So I think you have to leave it on.
Yeah, I would agree. Bret says, do you feel the passive stigma has been relaxed by the massive amount of talent in the marketplace due to COVID? Seems empathy would balance that out, he says. And I think, yes, I think there is a much more empathetic tone to the job market overall.
I know. I mean, I read that, and my thoughts are, of course, it should, right? We should, but we still live in a country where there's a lot of odd behavior that continues.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, it's the reality of, like, look, I live in New York City, where the employers still think like a year or 2 years is not enough time. Like, they should be there 3 to 5 years, 7 years. It's not 1997 anymore. Like, that's not happening anymore. And it's just an educational issue is really what it is. This passive stigma is an issue of people not being educated. And actually, one bit of data that I just thought of this, Chris, we should work on it at some point. Like, you know how, I mean, you've been in recruiting longer than I have, and or the space, you totally understand this. But like, if we went back 5 years, 10 years, people would say, if you're at a job 3 to 5 years, it's considered a good tenure, right? When I ask executives now, or if I ask heads of people now, what's the right tenure? How are you defining a good tenure? They can't really answer it. They don't know, is it a year? Is it 2? Like, we almost need a new definition of it, because I think that would help us, as Bret's saying, to like eliminate the passive stigma. If it was like, well, if they stay with you 9 months to a year and they produced well and they were a strong employee, that's enough. And if it's enough, who cares if they leave jobs every year? But there's a disconnect between how we're defining it. So that's part of the educational gap.
Yeah. The word of the year in HR is empathy, Laura. I don't know if you noticed or not, but in fact, I just wrote up a blog post on, I use the word empathy in the title, about, around the candidate experience, the applicant experience overall. But from what it sounds like, I mean,
Oh, that's
it
good.
sounds like people are trying to do it, but maybe not in reality. It's not as widespread as we might think.
Yeah, Brett just said good tenure equals the hiring manager's average tenure, which is that's the problem. It's too subjective. We need like objective information about it. Like somehow 3 to 5 years when we go back 10 years ago was the norm. We need a new norm, and we probably need it to be 9 months to a year, truly, is what it is. And Carla, I just saw your note about lack of empathy, and it really is interesting. As you said, COVID has brought out people's true colors, and I could not agree more. I think empathy, I mean, you saw my empathy hat, and just soft skills in general, they're skills that we can all learn and develop. So, like, this is the time to do your own work, all of us, on reading and podcasts and journaling or therapy or coaching or whatever you need, because we all need to be learning how to better communicate and better, like, interact with one another.
Yeah, totally. I'll give a tip out there. So, and I've used this multiple times in the past. So back in the 90s when I graduated college, I had a marketing degree. So, and where I live here in Connecticut, there's a bunch of like marketing consulting companies, and that's who I wanted to work for. So I went to the library. This is pre-internet days. I'm dating myself. Came up with a list of about 80 different companies. Tried to find the name of the president, things like that. So I wrote instead of a resume, I created what I call a personal marketing newsletter. It was kind of like a 3 columns. I did it in Microsoft Word. Had my name, big name at the top as the title. And it was like who, what, and why of what I wanted to do. And I mailed it out to 80 firms. I got 11 responses back. I got, I think, 11 interviews, and I got 3 job offers out of it. That's kind of a case of company hunting, right? You go out there and find companies who you want to work for, and then try and get in overall. And even back in 2015, when I had my last corporate job, I did the same thing almost. Instead of mailing it out, I used the 2-day USPS envelope, and I wrote up a little cover letter, threw my resume in there, made a little graphical tagline for an employer branding project they were looking for, and mailed it in and got an interview the next day. So offline tactics like that still work.
Exactly, being creative. But in that example, what's amazing is you're saying too that you were thinking about what they wanted. You were thinking about what those hiring managers would have wanted to see from you.
Yep.
And that's where empathy is important, even from the candidate to the hiring manager. And, we always obviously talk about how important it is for the recruiter to the candidate, of course. I mean, that's why we all do training on candidate experience, and we're so conscious of that. But actually, if you flip it the other way, that's really where there's a gap. So most candidates aren't thinking about it from the point of view of the
yeah. So if you're out there looking for a job right now, go look at the company's website. Right, here's a good tip. Is like, go find something they're doing wrong online, and point that out and educate them on why they should change it. There's your opener, right? There's your intro to the company. Spot something they're doing wrong, and you might get in the door faster.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. Like someone the other day said to me, well, I mean, I can't like email the head of recruiting at Facebook. I'm sure they get a million emails. And I was like, I bet they don't. I bet actually most people feel like you and don't email them because they're terrified. Because we think of them as some kind of like Wizard of Oz that we don't touch. And I think it's important to put yourself out there and to be more confident in your outreach, because you're absolutely right. And I love your data, because I tell this to people a lot too, Chris. Like you could email 80 people and get 5 interviews, and that's good data in my book. Like there's no, I mean, the ROI is whatever you get out of it, and it's okay, right? You can't go into it saying, I hope I get at least 80% response rate. It's not going to work like that. It's going to work on just a connection.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions? We've got Laura for another 15 minutes here or so. Anybody want to talk about their job search journey? Any highs and lows? Feel free to chime in. I'm curious to hear what you guys are up to and what's happening out there in the market.
I'm also happy to talk about LinkedIn or social media if any of you want to do that too. I've got gosh, 90,000 followers on LinkedIn now. And so I don't like to think of
Do you
myself as an
really?
expert. Yeah.
Okay, let
But
me
I
ask you about
often
that.
sort of forget to mention that, like, I kind of know a few things about LinkedIn. If anyone wants to ask me,
So wait a minute, how many connections do you have?
I don't know, more than 10,000.
Okay, I have like I'm approaching 7,000, but
Yeah.
you can get followers too, right? So, um,
Yeah, followers come from what you post and from what you blog or what you
okay,
comment.
here's a question for you. How often do you post on social media, Laura?
There's two schools of thought. So there are the people who plan it and like know they're going to do 2 posts a day or 3 posts a day, or I mean, I just do it when I feel inspired. So I would say you start somewhere. I definitely post every day on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Um, I'm not on Facebook actually, which is interesting because I know you talked a lot about it. I just personally don't. I've never liked Facebook. It's just not something I feel compelled to do. I think you do what's comfortable for you. LinkedIn's obviously the most comfortable for me because it's really recruiting and talent focused. But I actually have a lot of fun on Twitter, for example. Like I've made a lot of friends around the globe since March there, where we really kind of lift each other up and make each other laugh and connect and share ideas. So I would remind everyone too, it's not just about like the quantity, it's also like the one-on-one connections you make from those places. But anyway, if anyone had questions about LinkedIn, I figured that's a good topic too.
Melanie got some questions about salary, tips on negotiating it, especially now. Can
Yeah,
you figure out the salary range for a position before interviewing?
yeah. I mean, negotiating salary is an art that we would probably need a lot longer to discuss. I think the key is writing down your own data. So writing down what you really need and want. The good news in New York, for example, is they can no longer ask you what you're currently earning or what you were most recently earning. So you don't have to share that. And so no matter where you live in the country, if you're seeing this or the world, just remind yourself that potentially you don't have to tell them, oh, I was making 70 and I want 90. You can just say, I need 90. You don't have to let people know what you earned in the past, especially as women in marginalized groups. Obviously, we have a way to go to bridge the gap. And so you don't always want to share that before number. I think so note being clear on your own numbers, being clear on what you need and want. Again, recognizing it's a pandemic, so maybe there's a 10K swing in either direction. You probably need a bigger range than you would have in January. And I think letting the conversation kind of go back and forth is important. So what happens is a lot of people in HR, at least in my experience, so they'll say, I'm looking for 90K. And then that HR hiring manager who might be really nervous and bad at negotiating themselves might say, well, that's too high. We can only pay 70. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye. And the conversation is shut. As a candidate, you have to be able to kind of bring that back in and say, well, hold on a second. Talk to me about your budget. So you said 70. Is there any flexibility there? You want to keep a conversation going. I think when both parties get nervous, it just shuts down. So I mean, that's general tips. I think there's so many that I can give you, but that's where I see the biggest issue. And figuring out the salary range before interviewing is hard because, in my experience, a lot of HR leaders don't want to post it because they don't want their current teammates to see what they're bringing someone in at. So if everyone on the team is making 75, but they can bring you in at 90, and that team finds out that you're getting paid 15K more than them, it's really like a pretty awful dynamic. So obviously we're coaching hiring managers over here on equity, making sure their people are paid fairly. We understand the need for transparency, but that's what's still happening. So it's hard to get those numbers ahead of time. There's no like magic bullet there. I would say be confident about what you need and want. Be willing to make them a little more comfortable. Typically an HR person's not a great negotiator, so they might freak out. You have to sort of tell them, well, wait a second, I would like to still talk about it. Especially if it's a job you really want. Gosh, if it's a job you really want, you want to make it clear. You don't want to play hard to get either.
Yeah, totally. Jamie's asking, she's seeing jobs unrelated to TA popping up in search despite filters. Yeah. Has anyone else experienced this? I'm assuming she's talking about LinkedIn maybe, or?
I see it on LinkedIn, Jamie, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know what that is. It's like truck driving and accounting. I don't know.
Yeah, job, filters and job alerts in general just still aren't that very good
Yeah.
across the job board space, and LinkedIn is no different. You know, if it has the word recruiting in there, recruitment, and it's mentioned in the, you know, the truck driver job description, it's going to come up,
Right.
right? They haven't figured out. I mean, to me, it's always been about job title, right? If you just, when you do these alerts and filters, start with the job title there. Nothing else should appear after that.
Exactly.
Until it's,
And do like, and as Chris said, do recruiter or recruitment or recruiting or talent, you know, any title that you think, just make sure you're doing title and then in parentheses, the words that you want.
yeah, let the alerts do the job for you. You know, that'll help you, make you more efficient anyway from just a job search perspective. The other tip I have too is I just saw some stats around this. I can't remember where I saw them, but it talked about being first to apply, and that if you are in that first 10 people who apply to a job, you're more likely to get get an interview out of that.
Yeah. I love that, because think about it, it's like recruiter fatigue, right? By the 40th resume, they're
Right,
exhausted.
exactly. You don't want to be 40, you want to, or 50 or 60 or
Yeah.
70. You want to be, you know, one of 10.
And if you're going to be 40 or 50, then you email them directly and then you're going to stick out. Yeah.
Totally.
I know LinkedIn's got a lot of issues. As I said, I was excited when they called me and I thought I could give them all my tips and tricks, but you can only get so far. They've got a
Yeah,
pretty big system there.
we've been railing against LinkedIn for, I've heard a post on them 5 years ago about, you know, 10 things LinkedIn should be doing, but they're not.
I know.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Laura, this has been great. Appreciate your time today as we start to wrap things up. Last chance for the audience to ask her a question here. Well, this I'll put the replay up in the next day or two and tag you on the socials, Laura, so people can rewatch this. I'll probably do a transcript of it as well for the blog post on HR Lancers. But yeah, appreciate your time today. And, you know, as we head into September, do you have any positive thoughts to leave us with?
Yeah. So just know you're not alone, right? You're a human being living through a pandemic. This is wild and you're doing great. And I'm proud of you. And just remind yourself that you're planting seeds. You're doing little bits every day to get the next perfect job, the next right thing. It takes patience. It takes perseverance. Try not to compare yourself to other people, because sometimes you'll see them landing places that it might not be your dream job. So stay focused on what you need and want. And we're always here as resources. Chris and I love connection, and you can ask questions. You can just follow up. We're all here. So, you know, you're in a community, you're not alone. And a year from now, hopefully we're all going to be laughing about this insane time.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope
you're
so.
Doing great. Just know that you're doing great. And, you know, yay TA and yay HR. We need each other. This space is not going anywhere.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Laura, put your Twitter up there on the chat, and also your website, eastsidestaffing.com. On Twitter at eastsidestaff. Definitely follow her. And good luck to everyone. And thanks for tuning in. And again, just if you need anything, just throw me a LinkedIn, hit up Laura, and happy to help any way we can.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Chris. Sorry for the delay, everyone, and we'll see each other soon.
That's all right. Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Next time.
Bye.